episodes of this great freaking podcast. 500 lessons laid down for everyone's ears. 500 episodes of this great freaking podcast. How do you measure the years? On YouTube, in a live stream, with great guests and listener stories, in discourse and workshops, Zoom happy hour nights. 500 episodes of the ADHD Podcast. How do you treasure 12 years of advice?
Oh my God, 12 years! Woo! Happy birthday! Wait, that's not quite right. Hey!
Happy 500!
500 episodes.
Oh.
That I would have listener Brian sing me to sleep any night of the week.
That was awesome. That's the first time I've heard it. That was so good.
So good.
Thank you,
right?
Brian. Oh my gosh, that was fantastic.
That is my biggest regret of today's show, is that I have already heard all of the listener submissions, voicemails, and wonderful messages that I don't get to experience them with you for the first time. That makes me sad.
I know,
but
you need to not be the producer and editor of this show. But unfortunately, we're not like
that's kind of the model.
Yeah, we're not the. Who else would do this like on TV?
We're no Gimlet Media.
Yeah,
we're no NPR.
Right. So we don't have the surprises, but I will.
That's right.
Will.
You will.
So,
you get all the surprises.
And
I
know people can't see this, but I have a fancy celebration hat on today.
Fancy. Oh, it's just glitter and gold. So happy 500.
Yeah. Wow.
500.
That's
what are we
fantastic.
What are we doing today? We started thinking about like how we wanted to actually have this conversation, and first always open with a song. So we've done that.
We did that.
We were going to talk a little bit, just reflect a little bit about kind of the roads
together
that we've traveled with this show, and in the process, we did ask. I don't know. I feel like we should out ourselves. We did ask people if they had thoughts about the show to please submit them and send us voicemail, voice clips, whatever they wanted to do. And two things happened. One, it's possible we didn't ask early enough. Possible.
True.
Two, it's possible many of you in our audience have ADHD. And so those two possibilities aligned, and we got a lot of them like last night as we were about to record this, which is amazing. It's like it is just a resonant chamber of my brain how this whole thing came together. So we did delay the show a little bit. This is coming a little bit late. We took an unintentional break so that we could put all of the stuff together. We just wanted to have episode 500 in the library as something where we just really got to celebrate and listen to your wonderful voices. We don't have that on all that often, and it was important to us. So our most deep thanks for everyone who took the time and overcame the procrastination, as you have told us in the community, and actually submitted these things, because it's really special and it means the world to us. So where do you want to start?
Wow. Okay, so let's see. How did this show get started, Pete? Right? You probably don't remember, because when we were talking about this before about the outline, and I told you my story, you're like, I don't remember that, but that's on brand. I could have said that.
Well, that was back in the day where anybody could ask me a question. I would say, we should podcast about it.
That's right. So what happened? So when was our first show? In August of 2010?
March 22nd, 2010.
March. Okay. All right. So it must have been earlier in the year, like at the very beginning of 2010, when, because at the time I was an organizer. And
you sure were.
I was a professional organizer here in Oregon. And there was a colleague of mine who was also an organizer who was asked to do a local radio show once a week to give advice, like to do kind of a organizing Q&A.
Mm-hmm.
And she had asked me if I wanted to do it with her because she thought it might be more fun to have another person too. And I remember talking to you about it. I'm like, Pete, because I talk to Pete about everything. I don't do anything without Pete. So I run things by Pete. And I said, hey, this is the opportunity. And you're like, hey, no, like that's too small. And at one point, I remember you saying you should be like on Oprah. I don't know if you remember that, but you're like, you should be the organizer that's on Oprah. But you were like, no, that's too small. We should do a podcast. And
I feel like that really sort of encapsulates our relationship over the years, which is you have great ideas, and then I come back and tell you, great, now let's do more of that. Make it bigger. Like it's great and too small. Let's do a bigger thing. Yeah. And so here we are,
it's true. And you're like, you can do this on your own. You don't need somebody helping you doing it. Yeah. And yeah, so you were pitching the idea of a podcast. I had no idea what a podcast was because remember, this is in 2010. Not many people knew what a podcast was in 2010. It's certainly not like it is now. And so honestly, I was like, okay, that sounds like a great idea. Because a lot of times I do that too. Because you're like, yeah, let's do this. And I'm like, okay, that sounds great.
Yeah.
But what was interesting is that I honestly didn't realize that it was something that was going, outside of just my website.
Yeah.
I thought it was
was a surprise. When do you remember when you realized that?
I think it was when we started getting comments from people. And so, because I really thought it was something that was just going to be on my website, like a blog, because at that time too, video blogging was kind of starting to get,
of
interested.
YouTube,
yeah. And that kind of faded out even. But, and so I really thought, okay, well, people are going to listen to this. They're going to find it on the website, just like my blog. That's fine. No big deal.
Yeah.
But I think it wasn't, I didn't really click with me until we started getting some feedback from people. And in the early days, we had some pretty loyal listeners. And so they would, there was one person who worked at a university, and I remember she was great. She'd always email us with ideas and so that's when it kind of clicked that, okay, this is kind of a bigger deal. But one of the things that I really appreciate about you, Pete, I guess that makes sense.
I'll take it.
Is that it never felt like I should be nervous. So it wasn't something that, oh, I'm in front of all of these people like live, so there was never that nervousness of speaking in front of a bunch of people because it always just felt like it was a conversation between you and me and people listened. But I didn't know that they listened.
Yeah. It is the most amazing thing about podcasts. And it was still, I had been podcasting for several years. I think my first podcast went live in 2006. And so like we had already kind of experienced the sort of euphoria that comes from being no one and having people start tuning in regularly. And in our case, drink beer with us. and that was it. I mean, that was the most, like, I realized we have collectively a set of skills that I think we could possibly use that to not just drink beer, but maybe help people. And so I remember being really excited about this. And also because at the time, like you and I were not talking about ADHD, like even with each other. Like, I don't think I had told you that I had ADHD. Didn't even know you had an interest. I don't think you knew you had an interest in it.
I didn't. No, that's exactly right. Because I don't think I knew you had ADHD until we actually started talking about ADHD more as we got, and we'll talk about this as we go from the branding change. But I really don't remember you ever even telling me outright, like, oh, well, I have ADHD. That's interesting that you want to like learn more about it. I think it was in one of our shows where you just started talking like you had ADHD, and I kind of figured it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
Let's, we need to start peppering in some of these voicemails because they're wonderful. So let's hear from Allison.
Hello, Nikki Kinzer. Hello, Pete Wright. This is Allison Kazmarek calling to thank you for creating this podcast. 13 years ago, at age 46, I was diagnosed with ADHD, but I only really began to understand myself and the impact it had on me after I discovered your podcast just a few years ago. Thank you for helping me understand that my ADHD way of doing things and my quirky workarounds are okay. While listening to the podcast, I've loved the many aha moments, realizing I'm not alone, and laughed at myself and the colorful detours my mind can take during any given day. You've made my ADHD learning curve informative and a lot of fun. Thanks, guys, and happy 500th show.
I don't know how I'm going to get through this without crying.
You're
I
gonna
don't think
be a
I'm
mess.
not. I think I'm
Yeah,
going to
believe
cry.
You're gonna
That's
be a mess.
awesome. Thank you so much, Allison.
In the very best way.
Wow.
Okay, so we did the show. The first show that we did was on the office closet.
Yes.
Why did we start with the office closet?
I don't
Is that
really
a thing that
remember
people
why.
were really asking you? Like,
Oh God, no.
I need help with my office closet.
No.
And we thought, hey, this is going to be a real banger for the archives.
Again, you have to remember, I had no idea what I was doing. I really didn't know. I thought we were doing a blog, and we were just talking about it. So no, I don't know why we chose that. I really don't. And one thing I do want to just put some context in is about how you and I started working together.
Okay.
Because I think that's kind of important too, because you really have been with me since day one. Pete and I, we met up in Portland, and we went to the same church, or we started going to the same church at the same time. And there were a group of us who were all around the same age and who were all starting their families. And it was a wonderful time because we all bonded, and we all it was just, I just feel like it was a really special time in our lives to have such good friends. And it was great. So I never really knew what Pete did. Pete probably didn't know what I did, because when you met me, I was stay-at-home mom.
At the time, I remember I could ask my own wife if she could describe what I did, and I don't think she could tell me.
Yeah. But when I decided to open up an organizing business, which all stemmed from looking at a article in the newspaper, it's weird how things work. I was reading this article in the newspaper. It was about a pharmaceutical rep. That's what my husband was. It was it was about a professional organizer, and when the local paper tried to do a search on somebody that they could interview here locally in my town, they couldn't find anybody. Mm-hmm. I don't know why. I thought, hey, that sounds like a great idea. I've never been that organized myself, really. I mean, it's fine. I mean, good.
Yeah,
I guess.
Do you know what? Because I got my master's degree in organizational design, right? And so it's very HR focused business degree. And so I knew that you too had gotten your degree in HR and had worked in HR at my bank.
Right.
And I thought, okay, so you must have a very organized mind. This is going to be great.
Yeah.
You know what? No notes. We're going to be fine.
Yeah.
For some reason, all those things taped together just perfectly.
Oh, I probably sorely disappointed you, because that just was...
Never thought twice about it. About it. And the things that I have learned from you, I still apply. Like, believe it or not, my office closet is what it is because of our show.
Our very first show. Oh, that is so funny. Well, and I do remember, so we had moved down to Eugene, which is about 2 hours away from Portland. And when I got this idea of opening up this professional organizing business, I contacted you and I said, hey, I think you do something with websites. Maybe?
Yeah.
And you were like, oh, I can totally help you. And you were so encouraging. You're like, oh, you could totally do this, and we can totally, and that's just where everything went from there. And that was back in 2008. And then we had this podcast idea. Why we did the office closet, I have no idea. I think in my mind, I was probably just thinking, what would be something that is small enough that we could get through, but would have key points that people could take away with, is probably what I was thinking. So I don't know. I haven't listened to it in years. So let's hear this. I want to hear it.
Do you wanna?
Uh-huh.
Well, let's just hear how we introduce that show for a minute.
Welcome to Taking Control, everybody, the inaugural episode of the Take Control Home Organizing Podcast. My name is Pete Wright, and I'm here with TCO proprietor, Nikki Kinzer. Hello, Nikki.
Hi, Pete. Welcome everyone to the show.
This is so cool, right? You're internet famous already, I'm sure.
I know. High-tech technology that I can do this from my home office.
I know, it's wonderful. And I can say things like, I'm sitting here with Nikki, and it's like a complete fraud. I'm not saying that. No, I probably shouldn't have said that. I'm pulling back the curtain a little too much. The purpose of this show, as we have been discussing over the last several weeks, is really to an extension of the popular Take Control Organizing blog that you've been running for several years now, which has a number of which has a library now of wonderful organizing tips and tricks and processes and forms you can download. You've been so active on the blog, and what we're trying to do here is add another dimension to what you can get from Take Control Organizing, to the resources and the tools that you can receive.
Well, you have a lot to say, Pete.
Apparently, I do. Shut him up! I can't do it anymore. What do you think? I mean, I first of all sound like I had. Do I always sound sick? Like perpetually ill?
No, I sound like I'm an airplane pilot. Hello, Pete.
We reach our cruising altitude.
Hello.
Does it take you back? Like, do you get the little shivers of, gosh, I remember where I was that day?
No, because I actually really don't remember the actual recording. No, I just, oh my gosh, the recording was awful and I sound like a mouse. I'm so sorry I sound like a mouse.
It's just we've come a long way, and technology has changed. I mean, at the time we were recording through Skype, like everything was done through Skype, and we had a tool called Skype Call Recorder, or Call Recorder for Skype, from Ecamm Software, and I think they still sort of make it, but Skype has made a lot of changes over the years. We have since moved to Zoom and do all of our recording locally on our local machines. So it's, technology has changed dramatically. Certainly our microphones have changed dramatically, the way we record. Our preparation has changed. I mean, everything has changed so much. And I don't think I ever realize or take stock in how much things have changed until I go back and listen to episode 1. Like we've come a long way.
Wow, we sure have.
Can we listen to another voicemail?
Please, let's.
This one's coming from across the pond.
Hello, Nikki. Hello, Pete. This is Björn from Germany, and I wanted to congratulate you on your 500 episodes that you put out there of your podcast. And I'm very happy also for Melissa, who apparently sent like one message after the other on Patreon that we were supposed to hand in our audio recordings, and I really, really wanted to, but I feared that I wasn't worthy. Hello? No, but the thing is, I feared that I wasn't... I had some issues putting my thoughts out there. And my first attempt was actually already a 9-minute episode of me just talking, but I think it didn't get my point across on why I wanted to send this recording nonetheless. I'm very happy for me being in Germany, and this is already Tuesday morning, and hopefully the time zones, if I got them right, do still allow for me sending in this recording or submitting this recording. What I really like about your podcast, Pete and Nikki, is that you show such a diverse range of interview formats, if I may say. Let me explain to you what I mean. When I click on an episode, I never know. Do you have like an expert, which apparently is well known in the American or in the or whatever realm of ADHD research, and you've got so many questions that you can ask them, or you talk more or less on the same level because you also apparently all know each other. But at the same time, you come back maybe with people who are basically just in your peer group, more or less, who you just think, oh, we haven't talked in a while, let's just push recording and talk about what you can share and what we can share. So basically it doesn't really feel, sometimes it feels very scientific or very very well thought through. I mean, everything about your podcast is apparently well thought through. At least it looks like that, or it listens like that. But at the same time, you also have a very spontaneous or a very relaxed atmosphere in which you just have a space of talking about ADHD, and everybody contributes what they have. At the same time, you also, what I really like is, and I'm talking about the example of the first Indian ADHD coach, you use your podcast, and we all learn, and we, the listeners, or I as a listener, and apparently you as an ADHD coach, Nikki, or the podcaster, Pete, you eagerly listen and you get to know the person while doing the podcast show, and you come up with the questions. I mean, you obviously prepare a lot for that, but it feels like we are all going on the journey of listening to the expert that you've invited, not really knowing what they have to tell you, and this is what I think is very interesting also. And last but not least, there's so many episodes where it's just you, the two of you, exchanging ideas. Sometimes Pete's got more the lead on the topic, in other sessions it's Nikki, and Pete is more or less questioning or asking or in the background, which I think is the nicest. And then you come up with all the connection to the listeners, which you apparently in the last month, at least I observe, are doing such a great job. And Pete, you nail the one with the, oh, that was my dog. Pete, I think you nail the strategy, or not strategy, but you nail the connection to your listeners, the way that you phrase it, the way you put it out there. When I heard my name sometime, I think in March or so, in which you started to actively shout out the names of your Patreon supporters, I think you are doing an honest job. You're doing also a job, more or less, because this is your job, and I really appreciate, and I really want, and very happy for being a patron to your podcast, because every dollar that I spend is one of the better ones. I think. Take care. All the best from Germany. All the best from a very happy listener to your podcast, and a very grateful Armbjörn, who just sends all the love and all the vibes. Congratulations. Bye-bye.
Oh, wow.
I know.
All right. The tears are
Armbjörn,
coming.
that was wonderful.
It's so surreal, isn't it? I mean, to
Yeah.
hear that, and like that he's talking about us.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah. It is surreal. I'm just so grateful every single day for people who are taking part in the discussion, and frankly helping one another. Like we were talking about the office closet, and back when we were doing this, the first many episodes, our show was an easy kind of library episode where people would find it based on whatever subject, whatever the topic was in the subject line, but wouldn't really take it to the next level. They might pick and choose. They'd listen to it. We'd have spikes in those early days where you'd see somebody found the show and downloaded every episode from Poughkeepsie. But, we wouldn't have that kind of baseline of people who are engaging with it. And it was only, I think, when we started up the online community just a couple of years ago that it really became real for me.
Right.
That there are people out there who are listening and trying things that we have done ourselves and practiced, and like we wouldn't do it if we wouldn't talk about it if we didn't try it ourselves,
right. Or I didn't talk to my clients about it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so it is just really gratifying to see the action happen, to see people test things and help one another, and watching that sort of self-support in the community has been tremendous. So,
wow.
Let's talk a little bit about the transition.
Yes. Okay. So this was an interesting time period. I had two particular clients who I worked with locally, who were both professionals. One was a financial advisor, and the other one was a franchise owner of a fast food restaurant. And they had originally hired me to come in to organize their work, because they both hired me for their work and workflows and time management, things like that, and basically catching up. Like they had both had a lot of backup and stuff that they needed to do.
Right.
And so when I went in there and we started organizing, but both of them had ADHD. And what I found was the the conversations we were having were less about organizing and actually doing the physical space, but it was more about talking about systems and processes. And one particular person with the franchise of the fast food restaurant, he was a big fan of yours, Pete, because he was very technical oriented. I mean, he really liked technology. He really liked trying new things. He's the one that introduced me to like what mind mapping is, and so he really resonated with that. So we would talk a lot about that. And what happened is, as an entrepreneur, which I didn't even really know I was an entrepreneur until this all happened, I really fell into it. But I started looking at these two clients and I thought, you know what? I really love the work I'm doing with them because it's going beyond just organizing. It's also really helping them with their workflows and making their life easier in ways that is more than just organizing space. And it's also giving them a lot of support with, congratulating them when they got through a pile of files or whatever it is that we were working on. And a light bulb hit where I thought, I really want to explore ADHD coaching. But even at that point, Pete, we really didn't go straight into coaching because I just started learning more about ADHD. And our show in the last, maybe year before we switched it had a focus of ADHD.
Yeah.
And so there was this piece that I felt like, well, I'm a professional organizer with a specialty in ADHD. And as a business person, I thought, I want to flip that. I want to become an ADHD specialist with maybe a specialty in organizing.
Specialty in organizing. Yeah.
And that's where it started. But then as I started like getting certified and going through all the courses and, going through that process of becoming an ADHD coach, realizing very quickly how much ADHD is affecting all pieces of your life. It's not just the space. There's so much more that's going on that I really just wanted to be an ADHD coach who helps adults with ADHD, and college students came a little bit later. And so it was a hard decision to make because at that time, our show was highly rated because there wasn't a lot of podcasts. There wasn't a lot of competition, and we were building an audience. And, we were like remember you would send me these little snapshots about we were like in the top 10 or something like that.
Yeah, we'd be in top 10 podcasts, and we'd start getting details from because there was really only the iTunes store at the time. There wasn't a Spotify, there wasn't a Google Podcast, there wasn't you just didn't have other opportunities really for it. You just listened in Apple Podcasts, and so we would get we'd get those bumps all the time. We spent a long time in new and noteworthy, right? So we got a lot of just drive-by traffic of people looking for resources, and there wasn't a huge market for answering the kinds of questions we were answering at the time.
Right. Well, and when I came to you to talk about this, I remember there was some resistance from you because you're the podcast guy. So what you're seeing is these numbers and you're seeing, hey, we're doing really well. We're getting a lot of this information out. And I will be transparent. I mean, 95% of my marketing is through this podcast. I almost all of my clients come from listening to us. And so there was also a lot of importance around that too. Like what happens if we change and, nobody in the ADHD world really cares.
And they don't want your help. They don't make that leap.
Yeah. So there was a lot of going back and forth, and I remember being in the hot tub. We have a hot tub, and I was looking. We live behind a mountain, and I was looking at the mountain trees, and and I was just kind of thinking, meditating, praying, whatever you want to say, and it just came to me like, nope, this is where I need to go. This is where I need to be. I need to continue this path of being an ADHD coach, get certified. We need to rebrand everything and take that chance because this is who I want to serve. And I remember how lucky I felt when you and I started looking at names, and all we had to do was switch the organizing to ADHD. Because Take Control ADHD was available for everything.
Yep.
And then at that moment, I'm like, that's it. It's meant to be.
There was a time in the early, like that switch was a massive commitment. And I don't know if you remember this, but those first 100 some odd episodes, it became clear very quickly how hard it was to create content every week, to do this. And so as I scrub back through the episodes up to 163, like there were a lot of episodes where we did one episode in a month, where we took months off, where like we just didn't, like there was, it was just really hard to muster the energy. And I don't think you had made that transition to this podcast is going to be a part of the business, apart from this podcast is an experiment.
Well, no, I didn't make that until after I got all done with my education. Because
certification.
There was a year and a half back in 2000. I've been certified now for almost 6 years. So there was a year and a half where I was doing all school stuff. So I had the podcast, I had a few clients, and then everything was around ADHD coaching and getting certified.
Yeah.
I dropped everything. Like I was only focused on that. So it wasn't until after I got certified that I started thinking, okay, how does this transition to be part of my business? And it very much is. I mean, you've got, to me, there's the coaching, individual coaching, group coaching, the podcast. They're all three very, very important. And like I said, the podcast is marketing for me in a lot of ways, because what's so great about the people that I've worked with, and I hope, they would say the same thing, is when they inquire to work with me, they already feel like they know me. And that really is great, because that builds a trust right off the bat. And I am who I am. Like I'm not any different on the show than I am as an individual coach. And so it's been such a blessing to build my business. And the other thing I want to say is that when you blog as a coach, when you blog and you have to research content and you listen to experts and you interview them, you are top of your game when it comes to ADHD. Like this is what allows me to keep learning, to keep being open about what I hear. I keep learning from my clients, from our experts. Like that I feel is so valuable, because it makes me a better coach, because I'm in it. I'm in it all the time.
So we opened with the good and kindly Brian and his musical number, but he also did submit a wonderful voicemail message. So let's start with Brian. We'll listen to a couple right now.
Nikki, Pete, this is your favorite off Broadway understudy, Brian from Maryland, wishing you a happy 500th episode. Congratulations. And by the way, I'm going out for this new part in this new play called Shocktato. I'm really hoping to win the part of Pete Wright's right arm. So, Pete, if you have any advice you could give me, if I could pick your brain at all, that would be really awesome. Congratulations!
Let's see, I'm actually touching
the Shocktato.
It does have batteries in it, but I'm not going to turn it on.
No.
Sorry, I leave it close. I think it's important to be close. You want to hear Chris?
Brian is lovely. What's that? What were you going to say?
Oh, yeah. No, I'm gonna roll through a couple here.
Okay. Well, I just want to say though, we have to give a little bit of reference about the Shocktato. You can't just bypass that, because people are going to be listening like, what are they talking about? So during the live stream, and this is a great reason to join Patreon at $5, because you get this kind of stuff. It's after the show, and we're talking about the Shocktato, which is this potato that's supposed to shock you. And Pete's fiddling around with it, trying to figure out, like, oh, it's broken, whatever.
I thought the batteries were dead. I thought the batteries were dead. And I wanted to, what I wanted to do more than anything was play, like hold the microphone, the speaker up to the microphone so you could hear. It is the music it plays while it's waiting. It's like a hot potato game, right? That's the whole idea. And if you are holding it, when the music stops, you get shocked. And I had it on the 3 modes that it's on. It has are lame, normal, and extreme. And I had it set the switch on extreme. And so I was holding the thing up to the speaker, because I thought that the soundtrack that it plays is the music, the theme song to Psycho. And,
of course.
And I wanted Nikki to hear that. And I didn't notice that my pinky was on one of the little shock plates. It wasn't on the plastic, and it shocked the crap out of me.
Yes, it did.
And on the live stream, and my right arm went numb, and
and you jumped
really,
back.
It is a
Your
product
eyes
that
are as
should not be
big.
sold. Yeah,
Like,
it's not
yeah.
sold anymore. Like you can't find the Shocktato in this current form. I don't think anymore. I think it was recalled. It's not a good product.
I
So,
was crying.
anyway,
it was so funny.
That was very, very funny.
All
Let's
right.
hear from Chris.
Hi, this is Chris. When I first got diagnosed about roughly 5 years ago, I had my diagnosis and medication, but I had no information. I didn't know what I was dealing with. So I just started researching, trying to find all the various resources that I could. Podcast, Taking Control, was one of the first resources I found. And at the time, for work, I was commuting about 3 hours a day. So podcasts and audiobooks helped me pass the time. And still to this day, the information I got from the podcast has been the largest resource and the most amount of education that I have received. In fact, I think it's fair to say that most of the other resources that I ended up discovering, be it books or websites or what have you, came from information I got listening to the podcast. Without what I learned listening to Pete and Nikki and their guests, I would still be so far behind in understanding my ADHD. I am eternally grateful to everything they've done, everything they've taught me, and making me realize that it's okay and that I'm not defined by my ADHD, and that not only am I not defined by it, but I can actually manage it and succeed with it and embrace all the positives that come with it. I mean, the positives of ADHD were not something I was even aware of in the beginning. It was a really tough journey. So even having that information to hand made it easier for me to navigate through the learning process of my diagnosis. Pete and Nikki, you're amazing. The information you provide is amazing, and I am so grateful. In addition to that, when the Discord channel started having access to a community of people who were going through the same journey, albeit individualized for each of them, it was very comforting and reassuring knowing that there was a place I could go when I was having those tough days or trying to navigate through something new that was a struggle. Being able to have those other people comment and reassure or validate what I was going through was amazing for me. So to the community as well, I thank you. My life was changed for the better by the podcast, and it continues to be so to this day. Thank you.
I got to say, it is, you talk about like relationships you build online and but I'll say this about Brian and about Chris, and we've got another one coming up from Ellie and from Matt. Like, these people have become important to me personally.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I know, because from my interactions with Chris in the community and in happy hour, that he's been going through crazy stuff, some wonderful, wonderful stuff after some really hard stuff. And just is like, I can't underscore that enough. I think sometimes when I listen to podcasts, I listen to my favorite podcasts, and the hosts don't know me from anybody. But once I was in the community and once I start having those relationships, I can't underscore how important these individual humans are to me, and that I think about them when they're not present. And like, it's just the weirdest reality that this kind of relationship exists. The podcast relationship exists, and it's an incredible community.
It's the community for sure. And I think, again, when you always have these ideas, and I'm always like, I don't know. And I remember when you first told me about Discord or Patreon, and you were like, yeah, it's kind of like public radio. What we're doing is we're asking them to donate to us, and you're explaining it to me. And I kept thinking, but what we do, we're doing it for free. Why are we asking for money? Like, I mean, this is a very honest conversation we had back and forth. And I felt bad, and I was like, no, I don't think we should do that. And we didn't for a while, like for a long time after you brought it up. And then you brought it up again, and my mind, I guess my mindset changed. My mindset shifted from it's not about just asking for money. It's about building a community, and it's about supporting the show so we can continue to do what we're doing and keep getting better at it, I hope, and keep being able to offer things that we couldn't have offered without having that support. But it's that community. Like once you sold me on the community and I started seeing like how people talk to each other and the different channels, because we evaluate all of that stuff all the time. Like what are we going to, how can we serve these people the best way that we can? And what do they need? What do they need from us? What do they need from each other? And to be able to see the conversations and their interactions. And I think it's not just about us caring about them or them caring about us. It's them caring about each other. And really, like, we will be done with happy hour and we'll have to go, and they'll be on happy hour for 3 more hours after we leave. So that's
what a good happy hour is anyway.
It is,
right?
really, right?
You got to close down the bar.
But that connection, and I would say that when we look in the future, that is the thing I want us to keep building. That's the thing I want us to get to really focus on and keep getting people involved and welcoming the new people, because I think that I don't want anyone to feel like if they've never been to a happy hour or they've never been on Discord, and I want them to reach out and I want them to get comfortable with it, because it is such a valuable resource, and anything that we can do to keep building that. And that's really a mission for, I think, both of us going forward, is we really want to keep building this community.
Yeah. Let's check in with Colette.
Hello, Nikki and Pete. This is Colette from Scotland here. I am quite a new listener, and I wanted to leave a clip for you guys to say how much I appreciate the podcast. There's such a great wealth of different topics that you have covered, and it is unlike any other ADHD podcasts I've listened to, in the sense that there's so many practical tips. You guys have such good chemistry together. You have such good suggestions. Nikki, you have obviously a vast amount of experience in working with people with ADHD who do present in the typical way, and not just the standard diagnostic criteria type presentations. And Pete, obviously you have ADHD yourself, and it's just so refreshing to hear your experiences as well. And you two, like I said, have such good chemistry, and I will continue listening and supporting on Patreon. And just thank you for all the work you do.
First, how delightful is it that this entire thing so far has been a parade of accents?
I know, I absolutely love
it's amazing. I listened to that last night and I was laughing. Colette, you're wonderful. And when you say, Nikki, you are clearly an expert and you have so many strategies, and Pete, you
clearly have
ADHD.
I love that. Oh, and what's I love about that too is she's a newer listener. So thank you so much for doing that and sharing your thoughts with us too, because that means a lot. And
for calling it like it is, Colette, calling it like it is.
I think that's really one of the things though that I love about the show so much, and I think is why we are successful, is that we do play off really well with each other. And I don't know how this would work if we didn't have each other to do it. Like, if you're going to leave the podcast or I'm leaving the podcast is over. Like, there isn't any, we're in this together.
I think we are. And, can I just say, in a moment of vulnerability, I think my relationship with you, I count on it as a real sort of aspirational, like, role model relationship for me, having a dear friendship with a woman who is not my wife.
Right?
Like, it's like hard to do that for a lot of people, and especially as we get older. And I have to say, it's just been really special to me. We've had our highs and lows and tough times, good times, bad times. And it's just really special. I count on it as a real high point in my life, like personally, that you're around.
Me too.
And it's just really great. So I appreciate that. So can we hear from my friend from Minneapolis?
Yes.
Hi, Ellie.
What I love about the show is that Nikki and Pete are so personable and so warm that listening feels like a conversation with your best friends. You always feel like you're in on the joke, even if it's your first episode. On top of that, their Patreon community is one of the nicest and most supportive corners of the whole internet. Here's to 500 more episodes.
Oh, I'm raising a glass right now.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
Yes,
I just love it. Thank you. Ellie is my NaNoWriMo buddy.
Yes,
and we are
nano.
cruising along in nano, and
That's
that has
right.
been just really, really great. And has been, and I would say, and I think Ellie has been along since the beginning of the whole Discord Patreon thing. Because she's just been super valuable in her sort of community building piece. And I know she's been very busy with, so many things in life, school and family, and that she's still around through good times and hard times is a real celebration.
That's what I love too about some of the people in the community. They can come and go because obviously we're not always available, right? Well, I mean, people that are, they have lives, so they're not always checking Discord. But what's so nice is to see somebody pop up and say, "Hey, I haven't been here for a while, and this is what's been going on," and it's really cool to see.
How about Lynn?
Nikki and Pete, this is Lynn Warner. I'm so grateful for this podcast. As I was going through the process of diagnosis for me and my kids, I was desperate for information, but also totally overwhelmed by it. The way you talked about ADHD made it seem so much more approachable and survivable. Hearing you laugh as you talked about the kind of challenges I'd had all my life was so reassuring. Since then, I've done other programs with Nikki and learned how valuable ADHD coaching is. And thanks to you, I became an ADHD coach myself this year. And now I get to share in the joy of helping other people understand and accept their ADHD. You've been so valuable. Thank you so much.
Yay!
Lynn is not the first person in our community, or I should say, is not the only person in our community to have gone from listener to coach.
That's right.
That's something to be really proud of.
Thank you. Well, and I'm so proud of them because, man, we need more. We need more coaches. We need more people out there helping the community in any way that they can. So absolutely. That's awesome. And Lynn, she's going to be great. She's going to have a great career.
Great.
Yeah. Awesome.
Fantastic. So you want to talk about our first guest interview?
Well, because I just think it's funny. When was it? What was the date that Lori came in?
It was we'll see, of course.
I think it was in January of some year. I don't remember when.
2016.
2016. Okay. So and we had started the show in 2010. So we had 6 years of just you and me, Pete.
Yeah.
Wow.
It took a while to figure out how to get a guest. And what's really funny is that Lori, like we're talking about Lori, she's still around. Like she's a member of our sort of cohort. She's been on several times and she's coming back very soon.
Yes, she is. So it was very good timing because she was our first guest and then she's coming back. And her first show was about medication and she's going to be coming back talking about medication. So yeah. Do you have a clip? I'm just curious, like what it sounded like.
I will tell you what it sounded like.
Okay.
Let me buzz into it a little bit. I want to try and find. I have just the whole episode here, and it's an hour-long episode. We're not going to play the whole thing. Let's see what happens.
I think most of the experiences that I've seen with clients is that's like the first treatment, right? They get the diagnosis and then the doctor immediately wants to talk about medication.
Yeah, it is. It's the I think it's also I think what prevents people honestly from getting a diagnosis. But you do need a diagnosis to be prescribed ADHD medication. It's and I like that you mentioned, Nikki, that people are at different phases and stages, and medication is not something like you do it once and it's.
Do you remember the first time just thinking about like how you do an interview? Was that daunting for you?
God, I'm so ignorant. Ignorant is so blissful for me.
Yeah.
Because I never have. And probably people have listened to this and thought, yeah, that's obvious, Nikki. Of course, you haven't done any courses or classes about interviewing with people. That's not surprising. But I always, I've always tried to just stay authentic. And I always feel like if I do too much research or if I do too much, like, how should I do this? Then I I self-sabotage myself, because then I start thinking too much about questions, and I start thinking about too much. And so I tried to go into it with just a conversation. And you were really good about that, because you always said, we're not going to tell our guests what we're talking about. Like, you can tell them the topic, but we're never going to give them a set of questions. And that's always been so helpful for me, because I probably would have done that. I probably would have gone through and say, okay, here are the questions we're going to ask. But I think
it's counterintuitive. It's counterintuitive. You want to bring guests on and make them feel warm and prepared, so they feel like they're confident and know what they're talking about. But they'll write a script and then they'll read it, and they'll get flustered when you ask a question that isn't on that script. And so we've always had a guideline of being just a conversation show. And here's a broad topic, and there are a few beats we might want to hit specifically, but generally we don't even say that. And our guests have been amazing, from Bill Dodson to Dr. Hallowell to Lori. Like, from day one, it's been broad topic, get ready. And I think the show is better for it. I think the show is better for it, and the conversation's better for it.
I would say that the one person that I was most nervous about was Dr. Hallowell. I was really nervous about doing that interview, because he is,
well, he's a legend.
He's a legend. He's the expert. He wrote the book that most people read the first time that they're diagnosed. And so I was really I was a bit nervous on that one. And I remember really trying to kind of mind map where the conversation might go and what kinds of things I wanted to kind of hit. And of course, you get into the conversation and it becomes just as easy and normal as all the other ones. And he was so pleasant and gracious. And that's the thing that I have found about all of the really, famous experts that we've had the honor to come on. Russ Barkley. Yeah. You go from saying, yo, Dr. Russell Barkley, to Russ in a very short order. Such a chill guy. Oh my gosh. He surprised me. He surprised me on how open he was and just comfortable. He just really made us feel comfortable. So it's
well, and I would
great.
say the same thing for Ari Tuckman, right? Yeah. I mean, Ari, being such a player in the ADHD community and ADHD event space, and not to mention an incredible practitioner in the space himself. We've had him on a number of shows, and he's the only guest in our history in 12 years that I've done a solo show.
I know.
Because you couldn't be there for some reason at the very last minute. I don't even
sick.
You were sick? It was a sick day.
I woke up that morning vomiting violently. Yeah. It was awful.
And Ari's schedule was such that it was going to be very difficult to reschedule, and we were trying to do. It was just kind of a last minute thing, and so I did the show alone, and it was a dark void in our history because you weren't there. We did okay, and I think I think about that a lot, because I'm very grateful to Ari for coming on the show and not having the ADHD coach present, but also having a good conversation about lying and ADHD, and I think it was. I hope it was useful for folks. That was a fun episode for us. So you want to hear this one's a little bit longer. It's a couple minutes from down under. You want to go down under?
Yeah, of course.
To
another accent. You bet.
Yeah.
Nikki Kinzer, Pete Wright. G'day, it's Matt, your favourite all-time Australian. Well, only because Colin Hayes Scottish, so all right. Look, guys, congratulations on a huge milestone, reaching 500 episodes. What a journey for both of you. You started off with your baby in 2010, and you've grown and you've transcended the podcast player into now what is a living, thriving and nurturing community. The evolution from a podcast that has been had a very specific purpose in the past to a podcast and social media platform that delve into, the broad spectrum of ADHD. From the outside perspective, it's been a wild ride, but I hope that it's one that has brought you both much joy, satisfaction, and has provided some validation for all of the hard work that I'm sure you've invested over the years. While in the beginning you were perceptive to the needs and the community that existed, 500 odd Discord members certainly solidifies the positive impact your show brings and the desire and the need of people to connect in new ways. Whether it's the issues or struggles that our ADHD brings, or just having a place to celebrate the strengths that make us unique individuals in our own separate communities, you have our gratitude for being brave enough to extend your footprint beyond a podcast. The podcast first really came to my attention in 2018. I listened to your chat with Dr. Doug Herr around inattentive ADHD. This was episode 337, some 163 episodes ago. And I've got to give credit to the phenomenal coda resource that you and your team put together in the last year or so for helping me to flesh out that specific information and have a bit of a hunt through. It's an absolute credit, again, to the diversity of what it is and the dynamic nature in the way that you guys do things. The conversation that you had in 337 with Dr. Doug really, really stood out to me because it was just that. It was a genuine conversation. It didn't come across as though you were interviewing an expert who'd come down from their high mountain and, could only speak in purely clinical terms. It very much came across as an exchange between friends. And speckled within that banter and interplay was great wisdom. And for me at the time, as a newly diagnosed adult with ADHD, it really helped to inform my understanding of what inattention was within that ADHD sphere. I think it's fair to say that the conversational nature of your podcast is what endears you to a lot of your listeners. For me, certainly, I know that I can consistently tune into the podcast and know that I will hear quality information and that you guys will be able to give me practical and functional strategies that can easily reside within my ADHD framework. I'm very much at ease knowing that the podcast is going to be presented to me in a manner that resonates with me and feels familiar. It feels like I'm listening to two friends having an informed discussion. But it's all the better for knowing that the quality of the content is well researched and steeped in evidence. As the podcast continues now through its 500th episode and beyond, the legacy that you both have built over the past 11 years, I think speaks volumes to your own personal ideals. It's reflected in the kindness, generosity, empathy, and just all-round social responsibility that you have for the people in our ADHD community. For that, I say thank you very much for all of the work that you do to faithfully serve this community. This gratitude also really needs to extend to your whole team, who play a vital role, I'm sure, in keeping everything behind the scenes afloat, maybe even keeping the stars, the talent's ego in check as well. So on this, your 500th episode, thank you, Nikki Kinzer. Pete Wright, thank you. Thank you both for giving of your time and your attention. We sure do appreciate it. Probably a whole lot more than any of us can ever really show you. Much love and peace. Hooroo.
I know, right?
Wow.
Just that was that closer, Matt. That was a real gut
That
touch.
was a gut wrencher.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and something I do want to mention is he's right. We were able to add on somebody to the podcast team. And that was Melissa, Discord mom, to help us with the podcast and be able to organize us. Make sure the guests are asked and get what they need before they come. And she's done a lot of stuff to help us with this show. So.
Well, and she's amazing. And another person I count as a dear friend over the years that has come from this podcast because, she was a listener first. And I would say our next voicemail is from the third in the triangle of incredible women who helped us get everything sort of sorted when we started the podcast. And she actually brings it up. This one's from Rachel. Between Rachel and Ellie and Melissa, they were our sort of early beta team. We have a channel in Discord that's like just people like these three people, because of their specific expertise on, gestures broadly, the internet.
Right.
And Rachel is a real, she's just a real star in Discord itself, and has been an incredible resource, I know personally for me, over the last few years as we get started with all this stuff. So even as I start to play this message, thanks, Rachel, for everything.
Thank you.
Here you go.
Hey, it's Rachel. So for the 500th episode, I just wanted to share that the burnout episode was the episode that I submitted, and it was epic because it helped me with actually getting a different job, a job that didn't really burn me out and actually caused the snowball effect to moving to where I am now. But the other thing is helping Nikki with discovering Discord.
So true.
And kind of helping everybody kind of get on the same page with that and, creating the community we have now. So, yeah, that's, I wanted to give a shout out to that. So, burnout and finding community. Honestly, that's what that podcast right here has done for me. Having new friends, having some more stability. So, yeah, thanks. Thanks, Nikki. Thanks, Pete. And thanks, Melissa. Tune you in next time. Bye.
Oh, yes. I do remember her saying, oh, I'll help you guys. I can get you on there. And she did. She navigated, and she was kind of a welcome person for a long time too.
Yeah.
She would welcome people and answer questions. And yeah. Thank you, Rachel.
Well, she was so helpful because I think it was Rachel who I would call that I don't mean this as dismissive, but it's a term, right? She's a first follower, because I had already been saying, Nikki, we got to do Discord, and you're like, no, we don't. I don't even know what Discord is. I don't want to do that.
Again, you bring these ideas, and I'm just like, what?
Right. And then I said it like I said it. I think it was manipulative of me, but I said it like in front of Rachel in an email or something, and she was like, oh, we got to do Discord. And you were like, oh,
okay.
Oh, well, if somebody else has heard of this, it's not just Pete's cockamamie idea. And it just sort of snowballed from there. So it's really exciting. And you should know, I mean, I know many of you think Discord, when you go into Discord, it's overwhelming with so many channels depending on your level. We have even more channels than that nobody else can see, because that's where we do all of our business. Like the whole team is communicating in a set of channels that's for the back end, the backstage. It's really exciting. We've got two more. Can I just run through them real quick and then we'll wrap up? All right. So this one comes from Sandy.
Hey guys, this is Sandy Esrael, and just wanted to share what I love about your show. Couple of things I would say, really. The first thing is, I mean, I'm not disliking your new intro song, but I really like the old piano one. It just had such a relaxing vibe to it and made me feel so calm when I would hear it. Like, here come some people who relate to me. And then two really kind of big things that I would say have been really impactful from the show would be, number one, I didn't know there was such thing as an ADHD coach until I was listening to your show. And since when I was about 25, everybody at my office job decorated my cubicle like a life coach. So I think I'm giving some very strong consideration to actually going to get mine. And then systems and tools. The one point that was made on one show at one point in time was that, there's a million different ways you can kind of do something, but your process and what works for you, you can't just keep trying a new system and trying a new system. It's just going to take up time, and it's more planning. It's not going to be actually taking action. So just to kind of break it down into something that works for you and stick with something longer to figure out exactly how that's going to work. So, but I love just all the tips and things. I didn't know about RSC either before. And, some of those other things that have come up. So just thank you so much, guys, for everything you do. You are loved by all of us out here. Have a good one. Bye.
Oh, if that doesn't fill your cup, I don't know what does. Oh, Sandy, thank you so much.
Sandy.
And I'm sorry about the song thing. I hear it. But honestly, it was time for change. I just needed change.
Oh. We did get a lot of compliments on that first song, though. Do you remember? It was weird. There was a period of time, like within like a 2-month period of time, all of a sudden we had like 4 comments about how much they liked the song. It was weird. It was weird.
Well, it was so funny because everybody wanted to find out like who did that song? Where can I find that song? And it was very frustrating because when we started the show, I had no access to like, musicians or artists or anything. That's literally a stock music element that ships with like GarageBand. Like it's just a thing. It's just music that we had a license for by virtue of the fact that I was editing the earliest shows in GarageBand. We've since switched to Logic Pro Studio, and now I have access to a resource library. So now we have like the theme song that we use now. You could go find it in Apple Music. Like it's a legit. We have an artist that actually did this song, and it's
crazy.
So it just was an upgrade, and I just think it's so funny that little bit of stock music is
very popular.
Of all the shows I do, I've never gotten a request for a single song like this one. So funny.
Yeah.
How about Shoshana?
Hi, this is Shoshana Blaze. I'm eternally grateful to have found the Taking Control podcast since I was diagnosed 5.5 years ago, and now have a bunch of kids with an ADHD diagnosis. I think my favorite part of the podcast is how it's not just something to listen to, but also a place where I can interact with everybody and get to know people in real life. My favorite episodes are the organizing series in February of 2019, and I super loved the episode with Dr. Kalaki Clark in February of this year, especially being a healthcare provider myself. It made me feel a whole lot better to know that it should not interfere with my ability to do what I do and do it with the passion that I have. I'm also super, super grateful to have been introduced to the complex parenting world with Giant Dumpster and Elaine. And that has been super helpful for my family. And all of the resources that you guys provide to us, from creative outlets to technology to emotional outlets. I just feel like every time I listen to an episode, you're talking directly to me, and I feel super heard, seen, validated, and really grateful to have been able to really feel like I have learned about myself through the podcast. So thanks.
Wow.
Right. Oh, you guys, this is this has been an incredible experience going through all these voicemails, right?
Oh, lovely. It's just surreal. I don't know how else to.
Yeah, like we
admit it.
started with, like it's sometimes hard to remember as we put these things out that there are people listening on the other end.
Right.
And not only are you listening, but that you're getting something out of it, that you are moved in some way, that your life is a little bit better as a result of some of the things that we're putting out there. It's incredibly gratifying. Thank you. And thank you to Patreon supporters for a couple of things. One, for allowing us to continue to make podcasting a bigger part of our careers, right? As a result of your support, we're able to make choices that mean we're doing more podcasting and less of other stuff.
Right.
This is the way we make a living in some growing part. And it's it's an incredibly important bit of deeply personal sort of contribution to our lives and livelihoods. But second, that your patronage allows us to do things for the community. Like, for example, I feel like we don't talk about this all that much. We spend a lot of money on human transcriptions every month, right? On somebody going in and listening to every episode and typing the whole thing. And I know Matt mentioned that he went through the CODA resource, and it was who was it? Chris, who was it? Who just said they went through and highlighted maybe it was Onborn,
right? Yeah,
Onborn, who was highlighting the transcripts, and that is the result of the Patreon community. Like those people made the early bet that this was going to be a thing of support, and now our show, since that point, has become accessible for the people living in the hearing impaired community who can now access the resources of our show as a result of your contributions to it. It's not a cheap resource having a human do that. We could do machine transcriptions all day long. They're terrible. But this is, it is a big and important thing. And I find it incredibly heartwarming that our first supporters are the ones who brought accessibility to our podcast on behalf of them. Everybody gets this thing.
That's right.
And that means a lot. Anything else you want to talk about?
Oh, it's it's just one of those things that I'll just be honest. I'm really proud of both of us being so consistent in doing this for as long as we have, because it's never felt like a dreaded chore or, oh, I've got to do that part of my business. It's always been so fun and exciting, and it's just been such a joy to do this. And I'm so glad that back in the day you said, let's do a podcast, because I cannot imagine none of the clients that I would have worked with or anything that I've been able to do with my business would have happened without this show. And it's one of those things too, that I think when you ask yourself, like, what do you want to do with your life? What's the job you want to have? And when I think about how lucky I am to be doing what I'm doing and to feel so passionate about it and really want to spread that joy and that hope and that inspiration and that community, and being able to do that, it's so humbling, and I'm so grateful for it. And grateful for you, Pete. I just can't imagine doing this without you. I wouldn't have.
I couldn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, talk about the stars being aligned. I mean, I really feel like everything has happened the way that it needed to. And I feel like there's so much for us to look forward to in the future, and so many things that we can do and hope to support this community. And it's just a real honor. It's an honor that you guys listen. And when we say thank you for your time and attention, we really mean it. Like, we really thank you for giving us your trust.
Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us. This epic, massive episode. If you have the patience, now that if you didn't listen to the live stream, now you can go back and listen to it double speed.
Right.
That helps you get through it a little bit faster. And so, but seriously, thanks for making episode 500 really special, and every one of the last 499 episodes before it. This has been a real treat, and we sure appreciate it.
And who knows, maybe we will do another 500 and be here in 10 years.
Let's just say it this way. We don't have plans not to.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Who would have known 10 years ago or 11 years ago that we would be doing this show?
Never would have expected it.
You're absolutely right. Who knows?
All right. Thank you, everybody, for your time and your attention. Don't forget, if you have something to contribute, we'd love to hear your stories too. Head over to our Discord server. And, you don't have to be a patron to get into the Discord server. You can. There is a link to jump into the general community. It's totally free, and a lot of great conversation happens in the free and open community right there. If you are a Discord member or a ADHD podcast community member, you get more channels. You get access to more, I think, quieter channels. Like, and I don't mean quieter, but sometimes not quite as busy. And it feels like if the general channel is going crazy, then sometimes it's nice to get into one that's a little slower, and you can post some longer posts and a little bit more thoughtful stuff. But it's all great, and that's the easiest place to reach us. Share your thoughts over the Show Talk channel, and we'd love to have you. So on behalf of Nikki Kinzer, I'm Pete Wright, and we'll see you right back here next week on Taking Control, the ADHD Podcast.